Hey everyone, welcome to the next episode of Outcomes. I'm your host, Barrett King, which I say every time. So I think at this point, you know exactly who I am. I'm joined by a special guest today. His name is Mau. He is the head of partnerships at Dixa. And fun fact, we've actually recorded this twice now because we did it once already. And for whatever reason, technology failed us, which it does sometimes, but it's okay because we're back. We had a great combo. We're going to have a better combo this time. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, we have to acknowledge
yes.
again.
It's always, there's always a little bit of iterations on new angles we can take in our discussion. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and we had a great chat. So we're going to get into it today, obviously, but first let's kick off with the proper question, which is, what does partnerships mean to you?
I would say partnerships for me, particularly here with Dixa, considering the market, considering the company, it's such a creative way to impact all different types of aspects within a business, but not just on the company level. I think it's a really creative way in which individuals can use it for their own individual success and kind of help them stand out to their peers and within the company.
So I think that's super interesting because a lot of folks, when I ask that question, talk about the meaning of partnerships and 1 + 1 = 3 and things that I think are really important to acknowledge. But your perspective is unique, perhaps because of what we're going to talk about today, which is the idea of how to take partnerships and build it across the business, not just a singularity in one part or one piece of the organization. When we talked about this before, and I want to talk about it today, your comment just now really resonates because ultimately you're talking about specifically taking partner opportunity, whether that be co-sell, co-service, certainly integrations, all the different ways that we can work with other businesses to add value to our customer. Talking about taking that, capturing it, and flowing it into different segments of the business. So I want to kick off with, as you think about that concept, as you're building this motion in this engine at Dixa and certainly past experience, where do you start off? I want the listeners to frame this in their mind in terms of, I've identified partners, which we don't have to spend necessarily a ton of time on. I talked about it before, but let's say that we've got a variety of partner opportunities. Where do you look for your early adopters? How are you thinking about those first steps in terms of building partnership?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start with those 4 classic different departments. I think classic marketing by yourself, it's expensive and difficult. Sales outreach by yourself, it's inefficient and pretty boring. Product innovation can sometimes be slow, and it can bring a lot of opportunity cost in terms of where you allocate your dev resource. And then, customer retention without integration stickiness in today's market could also be pretty risky. So if you have these 4 different departments, that partnerships can impact all of them, but you have this new partner program and you want to get that buy-in, you can't try to enable all of them at the same time. So the approach I try to take in trying to decide which department do I go for stems from the logic of you as a business, you're constantly competing with your competitors in the market, but there's always a constant comparison taking place within your own organization too. You're competing, marketing versus sales. So within departments, you're competing against your peers, SDR versus SDR, AE versus AE. And then of course, if you're an international company, you also have different regions. So maybe Denmark is competing against the UK or Germany is competing against the US. So with that logic combined, I decided, the first department I'm going to look at to get that buy-in and momentum is the sales department.
That's smart. And in that context, then, are you looking for, I'm picturing the, perhaps an American expression, but the idea of the inside man, the person that can go and sort of see the ideas of partnership being a good go-to-market. Are you looking for early adopters first, or do you go to like a specific team? How do you think about establishing your beachhead, if you will, in terms of the early opportunity? I understand the sales component of it, but then where within sales? Is it a rep? Is it an SDR? Is it a series or a team of folks? How do you think about that?
I went for a rep. Specifically, I started with the SDRs. I kind of just started with some light things, such as having an SDR mention partners and the joint value of, Dixa plus partner. Maybe that is of interest, and just really championed 1 or 2 specific SDRs. And as you can imagine, if after 3 or 4 months, you see that rep had increased their success rate in booking meetings, even by a few percentage points, but you times that by 15 to 20 SDRs that you might have a team, well, things get quite interesting.
Yeah, the impact is significant there. Yeah.
Yep.
So
And
in
so,
that context, yeah, actually keep going, please.
yeah. And then I was just thinking on kind of on other points that, that might be worth mentioning. If it's an AE, if it's an SDR, there's also a form of disqualification, that I took on board. Some AEs looked at partnerships as, oh, it's another business I got to learn. It's another value case. I even had one or two AEs where they didn't even really want to mention that they got help from a partner because it took away from their achievement of getting
pride.
help
Sure.
to close a deal. So there was a lot of pride involved.
Yeah, that's interesting. So when you're then, as you're going through this process and you're identifying, the good fits and whatnot, well, actually, before we get into it, let's just give me your 30-second or 1 minute pitch on Dixa so that folks can frame out in their mind why partnerships are applicable to the opportunities you're pursuing.
Absolutely. Dixa is a help desk solution. So we provide a platform to customer service teams to essentially communicate more effectively to their end customers. So we play in a similar field as the Gladly's, Customers, Gorgeous's, Intercoms, and Zendesks out there. We're a Danish company.
Okay. It's helpful because then I'm thinking about your partners are already working with your customers, I would expect in some regards. And at the same time, there's probably an opportunity for, I'm going to, maybe project here, but like implementation, integration, migration, all the things you'd expect from SIs that may be supporting those customers. So you've got your early adopters now, right? Let's frame that out. We've got a few SDRs. You've got a few AEs. You get some folks that are saying yes and it's working. Do you stay in sales? Do you then say, I've got the start of a use case, let this grow and focus elsewhere? How do you think about that?
I stayed in sales for a fair amount of time before moving on to marketing.
Yeah.
I wanted to take those few reps, and if they became champions, then I really showcased them to kind of essentially get the next 4 and then the next 4 to essentially replicate. So let's talk about
that. Let me jump in real quick. How did you showcase them? Because folks want to know, I expect. How did you go about highlighting their success?
I think that there's 2 approaches that I took.
Okay.
The first was in terms of motivating people to actually pay attention and have a will to learn. And I broke that down into 2 sections. One, I said, if you take the time to learn about another business, a rep from a partner, and just in general collaborate with a partner for your own individual metric success, this is not only going to make you stand out to your managers for thinking outside the box, this is also going to help you move probably within the company because you're doing something different for individual, but also group, department, and regional success. But the second thing that I did, which I thought was very important to do, is, there's a reality here where you're asking them to take time to develop a new skill set and to take on new responsibility. And if they're not fully convinced of the value partnerships can bring for their own individual success, it's kind of like, don't do it for me. Don't do it for your boss. Don't do it for Dixa or within the company that you're working in, but really do it for yourself. Because the reality is that partnerships is in an upward trajectory. I think the United States is a bit ahead of the curve compared to Europe, but they're still both going up. So if you don't want to be at a competitive disadvantage for your next job, if you're staying in a similar type of role, best to learn partnerships. You don't want to let that ball drop because you're going to be in your next job interview and there's a fair chance you're going to be competing with reps who already know how to work with partners, and you don't want to be in that position.